Cristiano Ronaldo stumbles upon a secret chamber hidden deep within the White House basement guarded by an ancient holy cross. As he descends into the darkness, he uncovers terrifying secrets that were never meant to be found. When Cristiano finally arrived at the White House, he was greeted by a staff member who led him straight to the basement. There was no fanfare, no press, and no one else around. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the air itself carried secrets. The further they went, the quieter it became. The usual bustling sounds of the White House faded away, leaving only the echo of their footsteps. Why all the secrecy? Cristiano thought to himself. The staff member stopped in front of an old, rusty door at the far end of the basement. "This is it," he said softly, barely making eye contact with Cristiano. The man's nervousness didn't escape Cristiano's sharp mind. Something was definitely off, but before he could ask any questions, the man turned and left without another word. Cristiano stood there alone, staring at the door. His heart pounded in his chest. Was he ready for what was behind that door? With a deep breath, Cristiano placed his hand on the cold metal handle. The door creaked as it slowly opened, revealing a dark, narrow hallway. The walls were made of stone, and the air was damp and musty. It felt like stepping into another world, a world untouched by time, hidden beneath the surface of power. Cristiano's curiosity was now mixed with a strange sense of dread. Whatever was down here, it was not meant to be seen by the public. As he walked down the hallway, his footsteps echoed loudly in the silence. The further he went, the more uneasy he felt. There were no lights, just a faint glow of old lanterns hanging from the walls. The chamber was deep beneath the White House, and with every step, it felt as if he was moving further away from reality. But Cristiano pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. After what felt like hours of walking to the dark hallway, Cristiano finally reached the end. In front of him stood a large wooden door carved with strange symbols that he couldn't quite understand. They looked ancient, as if they belonged to a time long before the United States existed. Cristiano's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the door. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side, but there was no turning back now. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open, and what he saw took his breath away. Inside the chamber was a large room, much larger than he had expected. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old books and artifacts, but the most striking thing in the room was the enormous cross that stood in the center. It wasn't just any cross. It was a holy cross, intricately carved out of stone and glowing faintly in the dim light. The sight of it sent chills down Cristiano's spine. He stepped closer to the cross, drawn to it by some unseen force. There was something about it that felt wrong, out of place. This wasn't a religious symbol meant for worship. It felt more like a warning, a relic of something dark and dangerous. As Cristiano circled the cross, he noticed strange markings on the floor beneath it, symbols he had never seen before. "What is this place?" Cristiano whispered to himself. His voice echoed through the empty chamber, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. There was something ancient about this room, something that didn't belong in the modern world. The air was thick with mystery, and Cristiano felt as if he was standing on the edge of a secret that had been buried for centuries. He reached out to touch the cross, but before his fingers could graze the cold stone, he heard a sound behind him. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of footsteps approaching. Cristiano spun around, his heart racing. Who else was down here? He was supposed to be alone. His eyes scanned the dark corners of the room, but there was no one there. The footsteps grew louder, closer, but still no one appeared. Panic surged through Cristiano's veins as he realized the footsteps weren't coming from behind him. They were coming from beneath the floor. Someone or something was down below, hidden even deeper than this chamber, and it was getting closer. Cristiano's mind raced as he stared at the stone floor beneath him. The footsteps were faint, almost muffled, but there was no mistaking the sound. Someone or something was moving just below the surface. He stepped back, his heart pounding in his chest, eyes darting around the chamber. Was he imagining things, or was there really something, or someone, down there? Without thinking, Cristiano knelt down to inspect the floor. The strange markings surrounding the Holy Cross caught his eye again. They were intricate, forming a pattern that seemed almost like a map, guiding him towards something hidden. As his hands brushed over the cold stone, he felt a slight groove beneath his fingertips. His breath caught as he realized what it was. A trapdoor. Cristiano pressed his fingers into the groove and pushed with all his strength. The stone floor gave way with a low, grating sound, revealing a small, dark opening. The air that rose from below was even colder and damper than the chamber, and it smelled of earth and decay. Cristiano hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. Should he go down there? What was waiting for him in the depths of this secret chamber? But his curiosity overpowered his fear. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to turn back now. Grabbing the edges of the trapdoor, Cristiano lowered himself into the darkness below. His feet landed softly on the dirt floor of a narrow tunnel. The only light came from the dim glow of the Holy Cross above, casting long shadows on the stone walls around him. The tunnel stretched out ahead, winding deep beneath the White House. As Cristiano began to walk, the sound of footsteps he had heard earlier grew louder, more distinct. They weren't random. There was a rhythm to them, like someone was deliberately pacing, waiting for him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as the realization hit him. Whoever, or whatever, was down here knew he was coming. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading Cristiano deeper into the darkness. He had no idea how far he had gone, or where he was anymore. All he knew was that something was waiting for him at the end of this path, something that had been hidden for centuries. His mind raced with possibilities. What kind of secret could the White House be hiding? And why had he been chosen to discover it? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened up into a small, circular room. The walls were made of stone, just like the chamber above, and in the center of the room was a pedestal. But it wasn't the pedestal that caught Cristiano's attention. It was what was on top of it. A small, ancient book lay open on the pedestal, its pages yellowed with age. The writing on the pages was faded, written in a language Cristiano couldn't recognize, but the symbols etched into the cover were the same ones he had seen in the chamber above, the same ones that surrounded the Holy Cross. As Cristiano stepped closer, he could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him. There was something ominous about this place, something that made his skin crawl. The footsteps had stopped, but the feeling of being watched hadn't. He could feel eyes on him, hidden in the shadows, waiting to see what he would do next. Cristiano reached out to touch the book, his fingers trembling. The moment he made contact, the room seemed to shift around him. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. But it wasn't the book that caused the change. It was something else, something hidden in the darkness. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps returned, louder and faster than before. They echoed off the stone walls, bouncing around the small room. Cristiano's heart raced as he spun around, searching for the source of the noise, but there was no one there, just the shadows creeping closer and closer. And then, without warning, the trapdoor above slammed shut. Cristiano froze as the heavy sound of the trapdoor echoed to the chamber, sealing him inside the underground room. The faint light from the Holy Cross above was now gone, leaving him in total darkness. His breath quickened as he realized the gravity of the situation. He was trapped, alone, in a place that no one knew existed. His fingers instinctively tightened around the edge of the book, as if it were his only lifeline. The footsteps had stopped once more, but the silence was even more terrifying. It was as if the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Cristiano's mind raced. How was he going to get out? And more importantly, what was he dealing with here? He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone to use its flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. But the room was empty. There was no one there, no sign of who or what had been making those footsteps. But Cristiano knew he wasn't alone. As he scanned the room, his light fell on something he hadn't noticed before. In the far corner, partially hidden in the shadows, was another symbol. It was carved into stone, much like the one surrounding the Holy Cross, but this one was different. It seemed older, more ancient, and far more sinister. Cristiano approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The closer he got, the more he felt a strange energy pulsing from the symbol. It was as if the stone itself was alive, vibrating with some dark power. Cristiano's hands trembled as he reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact, the entire room shifted again. The air grew heavy, and the stone walls seemed to pulse with energy. The footsteps returned, louder and more frantic than ever. But this time, they weren't just sounds. They were real. Cristiano could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet as something moved toward him. Panic surged through his veins as he spun around, desperately searching for a way out. The trapdoor above was sealed tight, and the tunnel he had come from seemed to have disappeared entirely. He was trapped, with no way out and no idea what was coming for him. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Cristiano's heart skipped a beat as the figure emerged from the shadows. The room, already dark and eerie, seemed to grow even colder. His hands trembled, the light from his phone flickering, as if reacting to the presence in front of him. The figure wasn't entirely clear at first, a mass of darkness, its shape shifting as if it was part of the shadows themselves. His throat went dry, and every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The trapdoor above was sealed shut, and the walls around him were solid stone. He was completely at the mercy of whatever this thing was. The figure stepped closer, and as it did, Cristiano could finally make out its form. It was tall, almost unnaturally so, and dressed in what looked like a long, tattered cloak. Its face was hidden in darkness, but Cristiano could feel its eyes on him, watching him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. There was something ancient about the figure, as if it had been waiting in this chamber for centuries, trapped in the darkness just like him. Cristiano backed away slowly, his mind racing. Was this a ghost? A spirit? Or something far worse? His legs felt heavy, as though the air itself was trying to hold him in place. With each step he took, the figure seemed to grow closer, its movements silent, almost as if it were gliding across the floor. Just when Cristiano thought the figure was about to reach him, it stopped. For a moment, everything was still, the silence deafening. And then, in a voice that sent chills down his spine, the figure spoke. "You were never meant to find this place." The voice was low, almost a whisper, but it echoed in the small chamber like thunder. Cristiano's breath hitched in his throat as he tried to process the words. How could this be happening? He had come to the White House expecting nothing more than a visit, maybe some recognition for his achievements, but now he was facing something far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. The figure continued, stepping even closer. This chamber holds secrets that were buried long ago, secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. Cristiano's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. What secrets? What was so important that it had been hidden in the bowels of the White House? His eyes darted to the ancient book on the pedestal, and suddenly it all started to make sense. This wasn't just any old room. This was a place of power, of knowledge that had been buried for a reason. But before Cristiano could say anything, the figure raised a hand, and the entire room seemed to tremble. The walls shifted, and the symbols etched into the stone began to glow faintly. A cold wind whipped through the chamber, and the air itself felt thick with something dark, something evil. "You've come too far," the figure said, its voice dripping with malice. "Now you must face the consequences." Cristiano's heart raced as he backed up against the stone wall, his mind screaming for a way out. But there was no escape. He was trapped in this nightmare with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The figure moved closer still, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. Cristiano's breathing quickened as the air seemed to grow thinner, making it harder and harder to catch his breath. Just when it felt like he would collapse from the weight of it all, the figure reached out a hand. It was bony, pale, and cold, like something that had been dead for centuries. As it stretched toward him, Cristiano could feel the temperature drop even further, his body shivering uncontrollably. But just as the figure's hand was about to make contact, something strange happened. The holy cross from the chamber above began to glow faintly, casting a soft light down through the sealed trapdoor. The figure recoiled slightly, as though the light was burning it. Cristiano's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The holy cross, the symbol of faith, of purity, was somehow protecting him. The figure, whatever it was, couldn't stand the light. With renewed hope, Cristiano grabbed his phone and pointed the light toward the trapdoor. The glow from the cross grew brighter, filling the chamber with warmth and pushing back the shadows. The figure snarled, retreating into the darkness, its form flickering as if it was being torn apart by the light. "You will regret this," it hissed, its voice fading as the light consumed it. "You cannot escape the truth." And with that, the figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows that had birthed it. The room fell silent once more, the only sound the faint hum of the cross's glow above. Cristiano stood frozen, his mind struggling to process everything that had just happened. He had come face to face with something truly terrifying, something that had been hidden away for centuries. But more importantly, he had uncovered a secret that was clearly meant to stay buried for what felt like an eternity. Cristiano stood in the chamber, his heart pounding in his chest. The glow from the holy cross above had saved him, but he knew he couldn't stay here much longer. The trapdoor was still sealed, and the strange figure's words echoed in his mind. You could not escape the truth. What truth was it talking about? What secret had he uncovered? Cristiano felt the weight of the chamber pressing down on him, his heart racing as his mind searched for answers. But nothing made sense. Whatever that figure was, it had spoken of a truth that he had yet to uncover. The air felt heavier, and despite the warmth coming from the holy cross, a chill crept down his spine. He turned his gaze back to the trapdoor. The cross above was still glowing faintly, but it wasn't enough to pry the heavy door open. He couldn't stay in this room any longer. He had to find a way out. The thought of being trapped here forever, or worse, encountering that figure again, filled him with a deep sense of dread. He frantically searched the chamber, hoping for a hidden exit or some mechanism that could help him escape. His eyes landed on the ancient book, still lying on the pedestal. He had been too terrified earlier to focus on it, but now he wondered if the book held the key to his escape. Cristiano hesitated for a moment, then walked cautiously toward the pedestal. His hands trembled as he picked up the book, the old leather cover feeling cold under his fingers. As he flipped through its fragile pages, he realized it wasn't just a random collection of writings. The text described rituals, symbols, and diagrams that hinted at dark, ancient practices. It detailed how the White House had been built upon sacred grounds, a place where powerful entities had been locked away, their influence hidden from the world. His heart sank as he came across a particular passage. It spoke of a chamber deep beneath the White House, one that housed something so dangerous it had been sealed away by those in power. And now, Cristiano realized he had stumbled right into that very place. The figure's words echoed in his mind again. You were never meant to find this place. Cristiano quickly flipped through more pages, and finally, he found what he was looking for: instructions for opening the chamber. There was a ritual described in simple terms, something that could be done to reverse the effects of the curse that had sealed him in. But there was a catch. The ritual would require him to make a choice. He could either free himself from the chamber, or he could lock it away forever, ensuring that no one else would ever uncover the secrets hidden here. His heart pounded as he weighed his options. Escaping was his only way out, but the thought of leaving such dark power behind, uncontained, was too dangerous. He couldn't let anyone else stumble upon this place and face the same terror. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Cristiano placed the book back on the pedestal and whispered the words of the ritual aloud. The room seemed to shift as the air grew colder, and the walls began to hum with energy. For a moment, everything went silent, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then a loud crack echoed through the chamber. The trapdoor above began to tremble, and slowly it creaked open. Light poured in, flooding the room and chasing away the darkness. Cristiano felt a rush of relief wash over him as the oppressive weight lifted from his chest. He was free, but as he stepped toward the opening, something strange happened. The holy cross above the trapdoor began to glow even brighter, and a wave of warmth filled the chamber. The symbols etched into the stone walls started to disappear, fading away as though they had never existed. Cristiano turned back for one last look at the chamber. The figure was gone, and the power that had once filled the room was dissipating. Whatever dark secrets had been buried here were being sealed away once more. He climbed up through the trapdoor, feeling the cold air of the night hit his face. The garden of the White House spread out before him, looking serene and peaceful under the moonlight. It was hard to believe that just moments ago he had been trapped in a dark, terrifying chamber beneath this very place. But as he stood there, Taking in the quiet, Cristiano knew that the nightmare wasn't truly over. He had uncovered something that was never meant to be found, and even though he had sealed the chamber away, the truth still lingered in the back of his mind. Days passed, but Cristiano couldn't shake the feeling of unease that followed him everywhere. The events of that night replayed in his mind over and over again. He had escaped, but the encounter with the dark figure and the secrets of the chamber haunted him. Back at his home, Cristiano buried himself in training and matches, trying to focus on his career. But no matter how much he tried, the image of the chamber, the holy cross, the figure, the ancient book, refused to leave him. He knew there was more to the story, something he hadn't fully grasped. Then one evening, as he sat alone in his study, he received an unexpected message. It was from an anonymous source, the content simple but chilling. You found the chamber. Now you must face the truth. Cristiano's heart raced as he stared at the message. What truth? What was still left to uncover? His mind raced with possibilities, but deep down he knew that whatever the truth was, it was far more terrifying than anything he had already faced. He looked out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. The world carried on as usual, unaware of the dark forces lurking beneath the surface. But Cristiano knew better. He had seen things that couldn't be explained, things that defied logic and reason. The anonymous message was a reminder that some secrets were never meant to be uncovered, and now he was part of a much larger mystery, one that stretched far beyond anything he could have imagined.